Good day, Toastmasters out there everywhere. We have an exciting show for you today. Great program, 3 talented speakers, table topics out the wazoo. Let's hear it for yourselves here at Toastmasters. Today is October 21st, 2006. We open up TV Toastmasters Advanced Club 9523. At this point in time, I'd love to introduce our Toastmaster for you. He is an ATM Gold, a competent leader, and a man about town, and a fine dresser at that. Mr. Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guests watching in today. We have a really nice meeting ahead of us. We have 3 speakers, as Gary mentioned, and we will have table topics. I hope that you're enjoying our nice October morning. What I'd like to do is proceed with our program today. I'm going to call our word, power, and counter up to the lectern. Carol Kormelink is one of our very distinguished Toastmasters that we have. She always has something interesting to say. And with that, I am going to call Carol Kormelink up here.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome viewing guest. The purpose of the word power is to increase our vocabulary with a word that we will probably use. In recognition of the program for today, I chose the word triumph. It's a noun, and it means the action or fact of being victorious, a conquest, a distinguished success or achievement, the exultation of victory, joy over success, and elation or exultant gladness. And I also have a little note up here on the lectern to help you remember to use triumph. As you get up here to speak, I challenge you to use that when you are up here at the lectern. Then I will be counting all the little ums and ahs. We hate silence, and so we think aloud and go, I'm going to encourage you to think in silence and not use those filler words, ums and ahs, and I will be giving a report on that. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. Carol is also one of our club members that was the Toastmaster of the Year recently. The next portion of our meeting is going to be table topics. One of the things that table topics does is it gives us the opportunity to speak on our feet. A lot of things that we encounter in our day-to-day lives require us to think and speak without a lot of time to prepare. What Table Topics does is it gives us the opportunity to practice doing just that. Our Table Topics Master for today is Miss Rita Reece. She is a competent communicator and competent leader, and what she'll be doing is asking questions to the participants here in our studio. And the time that they will have to prepare is basically the amount of time they have to get up here to the lectern. Help me welcome Rita.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, fellow Toastmasters, listening audience. I hope that I am triumphant and doing a table topics today that you appreciate. I was thinking that since it's almost Halloween, it might be good to do one on Halloween. It's nice and cool out this morning and cool in here. So I thought that I would give people different Halloween jobs to do up here. Carol, for Halloween, you're going to be a witch. What kind of spell are you going to put on somebody and why?
Madam Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests at home. Thinking on your feet when you have nothing to say is one of the things that you learn in impromptu speaking. Now, if I were a witch, I would probably be the good witch and put the hex on all the people around me to say good things about everybody that they come in contact with. Find something good to say about them. It may be that when they leave the room and everyone says, boy, I'm glad that they're gone, you speak up and say, everyone brightens a room. Some by arriving, and some by leaving, so that you find something good to say about each person that you come in contact with. And I think that would make the world better, and then we would have more treats on Halloween instead of tricks. Madam Topic Master. Which way are we going to go here?
There you go, madam. Okay, very good, Carol. Let's see. Steve, you're going to be a ghost for Halloween. Who are you going to scare? Steve.
Thank you, Madam Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests looking in. Who am I going to scare as a ghost on Halloween? Well, this would be a perfect opportunity to wreak some havoc on some of those people who tend to be taken up with themselves. I know a few people that there's no one more important in the world than themselves. And that, I think, would lend itself to some really nice opportunities to carry out some mischief. I could triumph in making things work just the opposite of everything that they're expecting. I think that that is probably what I would be doing as a ghost, and other than that, I'm a bit at a loss for what else I would do. Madam Tabletopics Master?
Thank you, Mr. Ghost. Well, let's try one more. Gary, you're going to be a fairy princess for Halloween. Come up and show us your best fairy princess.
The divorce proceedings will begin next week. Well, since I'm going to be a princess, I'm going to need a wand. Obviously, this is a fairy princess wand for the type of princess that I would be. You see, I'm a masculine, rough, gruff, self-individuals type of guy that gets things done. So for me to be a princess would be completely out of character, but I'm going to try my hardest. I'm going to be known as the Anderson Union Princess. Yes, it's my goal to try and tap everyone outside of Anderson Union so that they want to come and live in Anderson, in the township of Anderson, where they could be in my magical fairy kingdom. I have a friend whose name is Mike. We'll call him Michael S. And Michael S. is one of those guys that likes Boy George, he likes Elton John, he likes a number of other people that would lend himself to, he could probably be my co-fairy. He's that kind of guy. And I would like to say that it's totally unfair for my wife to have picked a question like this for me, to put me in this kind of fairy position, knowing that I'm the kind of guy that would would love to have a crocheted spittoon for a present rather than a fairy outfit. So with that said, I would like to please leave the lectern and quit embarrassing myself right now. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, fairy. That's a little payback. Well, I guess we should probably move on with the next part of our meeting, and thank you for listening to our table topics. It's been fun. Mr. Tabletop Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rita. Well, Gary, I'm not going to move. I'm going to stay put, so you'll have to work a little bit harder to get me to move. At this point, we're going to get into our prepared speech portion of the meeting. What this portion of the meeting will provide us is the opportunity to see several speeches that are presented by our participants here today. These speeches have different objectives that they seek to achieve, and I will provide you with some introductory information on each one of them. Our first speaker today is Rick Davis. Rick Davis is a distinguished Toastmaster. He is going to be presenting a speech from the Basic Communication Manual. It's project number 6, which is entitled Work with Words. The objective is to select the appropriate language or words to use in the speech. He also is to avoid the use of lengthy sentences and jargon. His evaluator will be Gordon Kelly, and the title of Rick's speech today is The Job Interview. Help me welcome Rick Davis.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Hire me. Please, hire me. Why? Why should you hire me? Well, you should hire me because my opponent, the other person you're thinking about hiring, is dishonest. They're known to be dishonest. And my opponent doesn't pay his taxes, so you should hire me because he doesn't pay his taxes. And he made jobs go overseas. And he received a lot of parking tickets. He received a heck of a lot of to the point where his car was towed. So you should hire me. He's divorced his wife. So you should hire me. He didn't shut down a nightclub, and because of that, somebody was shot at that nightclub. So you should hire me. He spends too much money. He has bad ideas. He didn't earn a second degree that he claimed he earned. He eats crackers in bed. He sneaked into a movie when he was 12 years old. And he's just an overall duty head. What will I do if I'm hired? I'd really like to tell you what I would do if I was hired. I'd like to tell you, but my advisors tell me that if I told you what I was going to do when I was hired, that you wouldn't hire me. Does this sound like an attack ad that we're seeing in this political season? An attack ad where you go out and attack your opponent. You don't tell anybody what you're going to do. You just tell them what your opponent has done. Think of each ad, each political ad that you see on TV, as a job interview. And that would be a very sorry statement on our political landscape. The important thing about this job interview, of course, is that most people get their political information from watching TV and radio, listening to radio. So, this is a major outlet for people to learn about their political leaders, but it's not very, very useful. Is this how we should decide how to hire people who are going to decide life and death? People that are going to make decisions about what we're going to be doing in Iraq, how we're going to handle Iran, how we're going to handle North Korea. Is this a best way to hire these folks? These are the people that spend trillions of our tax dollars every year. This is how we hire these folks. So the question is, what can we do about the current political environment? Well, what happens is that attack ads work, and we found this out in 2000 when just about every candidate had an attack ad going, and the successful ones had the biggest attacks. What we need to do is find out the facts. We need to read newspapers, we need to go to debates, we need to go to websites and find out what these people really do stand for. I think it's important that we protest too. If you see an attack ad that particularly makes you angry, that you don't enjoy, that you feel is dealing in dirt, you need to let the political parties know that are involved at this, that you don't appreciate the level at which their attack ads have fallen. Short of not allowing candidates to buy political time on television, which is probably unconstitutional, I see no other way to get out of this. The candidates need to be able to contact the people. On the other hand, they also need to provide a message. So, I want to be triumphant in my job interview. I want to be triumphant in the upcoming election. But hire me for the right reasons. Because I'm the most qualified. Because I can do the best job. Not because I produce the best dirt. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Rick. At this point, I'd like a minute of silence for our evaluator to prepare his evaluation. Thank you, Rick, for that interesting presentation. It didn't take me long to figure out what you were talking about. The other thing I dislike are the wedge issues, the issues that come up, and they're basically a distraction. They get everybody looking at one or two things that have very little to do with the conduct of the candidate once they get into office. They're very uninformative. They are some emotionally loaded issue, and they leave the audience with no clue as to what they're going to do about the day-to-day nitty-gritty stuff that we have to deal with. Enough said about that. At this point, I'm going to introduce our next two speakers. We will hear from Kormelink and Gary Reece. Carol is going to be presenting speech number 4 from the special occasions speeches. Her particular project speech is how to present an award. She's going to be giving us a presentation on what one would do if you were going to present an award to someone. And the title of her speech portion is Thank You. She has known the recipient for several years and is well aware of this individual's accomplishments. And her evaluator will be Darren Henderson. Participating with Carol in this presentation is Gary Reece, and he is going to be doing project number 5 from the Special Occasions Manual. He is going to be the recipient of this award, and therefore the topic of, or title of his manual presentation is How to Receive an Award. The title is The Narcissistic Opera Singer. This is going to be interesting. He has his ATM silver and is also a competent leader. He's a division governor, and he also happens to be the president of TV Toastmasters. With that, I would like you to help me welcome our next two speakers, Kormelink and Gary Reece. Yeah, Carol will be calling people up here at the appropriate moment.
Right. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our welcome guests at home. The year is 2008. The special person that we're recognizing today, Gary Reece, from this club, TV Toastmasters, has just won the world champion of public speaking at the International Convention. Our club would like to thank this individual because he had 25 years, 4 months, and 10 days of his life taken from him unjustly. And now he was reaping the rewards of what he has gone through. And we would like to recognize that he has published his book about his experiences. He's now travels around the country with his book signings. He's been asked to come out to California to sign his book out there, and he's gone all over for his book signings. He also, our club, TV Toastmasters, reached President's Distinguished for the first time in the history of our club. And with Gary's help, our club built to 25 members. And we have people on a waiting list because our studio is small and can only accommodate about 25 people. So to recognize this man, we want to thank him for all that he has done and how he has turned a life that could be bitter and resentful into a triumph, and teaching other people how to forgive, how to be triumphant, and we'd like to recognize him. Hello. To win the world champion of public speaking, Gary started at the club level, and he won a small trophy for being the best speaker at the club level. Then he went on to an area level and was the best speaker. Out of 6 different speakers, he was the best. After the area level, you travel to the division level, and out of 6 divisions, he was the best. The division level goes on to the district level. And out of the 6 divisions in the District 40, Gary was the best. You have many districts, I'm not quite sure how many, that make up the region. And the thing about it, everyone has one good speech within them, but to have 3 separate good speeches, none of which can be related to the other. If there's any crossover, if you get eliminated. So Gary had his second speech at the regional level, and of all those districts, Gary was triumphant. At the international level, we have people from 90 countries, and at the international level, he also was the best out of the 10 speakers at the international level. So he has many, many trophies. They each get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we wanted to give him a small token of our remembrance. So Gary, if you would please come up here, we have a very small token of remembrance for you. We would like to present you with this paperweight, and congratulations, Gary. And then we want to recognize you, and we have a pin for you.
Now, truly, I'm a fairy.
Why did you get stuck with that pin?
Thank you. Well, I'm touched. What an introduction. I couldn't have written it better, and I think I did write that. I'm reminded of the narcissistic opera singer. Great opera singer, but the only problem was the narcissistic opera singer kept singing over and over again, me, 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 me. And this isn't about me. These awards, these accolades, they're really truly not about me. They're about a number of people. Let me just share a few with you. My club here at TV Toastmasters. Everything I've accomplished, I owe in part to this club because they helped build me into the speaker that I am today, the man that I am today. Darren Henderson, it was through you that I learned the art of being studious, learning your facts, gathering them together. Practice, practice, practice. You taught me that, brother. Gordon, you showed me what humility means, especially humility under fire. I remember one day you made a mistake and I was frustrated, and you showed me that being a people person, being able to smile and say, hey, I goofed, get over it, it meant something to me. It showed me what I needed to learn in that particular aspect of my life. Steve, your compassion and your sincerity just oozes out of every syllable. You taught me how to take that portion of my vocal variety and apply it in my presentations. And people now believe the words that I'm speaking, that I'm uttering, because I'm able to grasp that concept of being sincere and compassionate. Thank you. Rick Davis, the technical merits, body language, eye contact, vocal variety, all the things that go into being a good speaker, a classic speaker, things that go into being a DTM, a distinguished Toastmaster. You embody that. And you imparted it to me. Thank you. Carol, your humor, that giggle of yours. You may be a mature woman, but your giggle is still that of a girl. I love it. And it reminds me that I need to keep adding humor to my presentations. I appreciate the fact that you taught me about challenges. You keep continually challenging me to go onward and do more, to do it better. And I appreciate that. Rita, love of my life. My wife, she's not just a TV Toastmaster. She's also my wife when she's not putting me in a position of being a fairy. She has shown me and epitomized to me what courage, strength, what these truly mean. She's taught me that it's not enough to merely endure or survive, but you must overcome the obstacles that you face. Thank you, dear. I want to thank Park 42 Toastmasters, another club I belong to, who's helped me in my journey as a public speaker. I want to thank Talk Toastmasters, again, another club that's helped me immensely. Each and every one of the members there, you know who you are. I want to share with you in conclusion a little presentation that was shared with me in prison during the first week of my incarceration, way back in 1980. It was an elderly man who was getting ready to go home. He had just served 20 years and was maxing out. He only had 2 weeks left on his prison sentence. And he told me, I've got a story to share with you, Gary. It's a story that somebody shared with me when they were getting ready to go home 20 years ago. And I want you to share this with whoever in 25 years when you get ready to go home. The story is called Keep On Building. And he told me that there was a man walking down a dirt path, and he saw over in a field of grass another man who was building a box And the box was made out of wood, and he had nails, and he had a hammer, and the box was about this wide and about this tall. And it was a 6-sided box. It had no hinges, it had no handles, and it had no holes in it. The man walking along thought, I wonder what good that box would be. You can't hold anything in it. It's too heavy to carry. It's cumbersome. Hey, buddy, what are you building? And the man in the field of grass said, I'm building my dream. He came back down that dirt path the next day, and there was that same man in that same field of grass, and this time he built a second box. Same width, but twice as high as the first box. Again, no handles, no holes, no hinges. Mister, what are you building? I told you yesterday, I'm building my dream. He came back the third day, and there was that same man in that same field of grass, and he built a third box. Same width, but 3 times as high as the first box. Mister, I got to ask you, there's no handles, there's no hinges, there's no holes in those boxes, they can't carry anything, they're far too cumbersome to do anything with. What in the world are you building? He said, I told you, I'm building my dream. Well, that man didn't go down that dirt road for a whole year, but when he came back a year later, there in that field of grass was a beautiful mansion. It had a veranda for a front porch, a giant veranda. It had bay windows. It had a cantilevered roof that was just gorgeous. This house was so beautiful, it should have been on a cover of Architecture Digest. The man looked closely, and he realized that the 3 steps going up the front porch were in fact those 3 boxes the man had been building a year earlier. And it occurred to him, this man had indeed been building his dream all along. As the man concluded the story to me that was sharing with me with this in prison, he said to me, Gary, I don't know how long you're going to be in prison, but I encourage you, keep on building the whole time you're there. That's how I ended up getting my GED, my Associate of Arts, my Bachelor of Arts with a double major. That's how I ended up finding my wife, finding salvation, getting married and baptized in the same week in prison. And the point to all this is, I encourage each and every one of you, keep on building. Keep on building. Keep on building. Because that's what you did to me. You encouraged me to keep on building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Would you time a minute of silence for us, and we'll have the evaluators complete their evaluations. At this point, we are going to move on to the evaluation portion of our meeting. I wanted to share with you the mission of a Toastmasters Club, because I think this speaks a bit to the importance of the evaluation component in our meetings. The mission of a Toastmaster Club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills. This in turn fosters self-confidence and personal growth. What we're going to hear next is some introductory material from our general evaluator for the meeting, Darren Henderson, and then we will hear from the individual members of his evaluation team. The evaluators will be providing immediate feedback to our speakers here in our studio today. This will give them insight into what they did well, the things that they particularly excel at in the presentations that they gave, and also provide some growth areas that they may want to consider in future speaking activities that they pursue. With that, I would like you to help me welcome Darren Henderson, our general evaluator. Darren.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and of course, our speakers. As Steve mentioned, the evaluations are really the backbone of Toastmasters, because most of us come here because we want to give better presentations and become better speakers. And the best way to do that is to give a presentation and then, of course, get that active feedback, that immediate feedback that lets us know what we did well and what we can improve upon. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first evaluator for today. And I would ask evaluators to also, in addition to the evaluations, make certain and read the objectives of the speech which you evaluated today. So, initially, evaluating Rick Davis, I'd like to welcome Gordon Kelly.
Thank you. Good morning to our television audience and the members here present today. As evaluator for Rick Davis, I felt politics and attack ads were a very appropriate message today, or topic. I thought it was very, very timely. The words chosen by Rick were simple, were short, and very familiar. I think we all understood them and knew what he was saying. Rick's words were vivid and did create a very mental image for me, and the image and the feeling I get nowadays when I hear about Washington is I just get sick to my stomach. I mean, I really can't. I very seldom today watch that stuff on TV. I do stay informed, but I can't watch the attack ads and stuff. I turn it off. It was a clear message on attack ads and the damage they can do, I felt. And I think there's a lot of false information that we get from those attack ads also. The vocal variety did express, I think, some of your opinion. At least I felt I was receiving what your opinion was through your presentation. And hopefully someday Washington will get it right and be triumphant at what they're doing.
Thank you, Gordon. I will be evaluating Carol Kormelink, and Carol's speech was called Presenting an Award, and her objectives were to present an award with dignity and grace, acknowledge the contributions of the recipient. And Carol, I thought you really triumphed in this speech. This is actually something I've never seen this group of speeches before. First, the presenting an award, then the acceptance of the award. But it's a very interesting project, which I've personally never seen in Toastmasters. And initially I thought it was going to be somewhat of a satirical or farcical introduction, but it was actually very sincere and very authentic. And I think you took it very seriously, which I think is very good. Initially, you explained the purpose of the award. You explained why it was so impressive that Gary were to win this award. But you also explained some of the challenges Gary had on the road to getting that award, which I think was very important. Because when we travel a long distance, I think, to get an award, I think it makes it that much more impressive. You also conveyed, as I said, how much deserved the award was. And I particularly liked the fact that you said what a long road it would be between winning a club championship, then going to the area and that entire progression up to the point of winning an international speech contest. I think that all of us, I think it was pretty amazing to think of how difficult it would be for anyone to get to the international speech contest, much less win it. So I thought you did a great job of that. And once again, I think probably the best part was the fact that you really were sincere. And I think that when you were up here, I could tell that you were really putting yourself 2 years into the future and thinking, when Gary wins that award, which I think you think he will do one day, I think you were thinking of how you really would present that award 2 years in the future. The only thing I thought you could have done a little bit better, maybe a little bit of an improvement, is just a small logistical item, and that's just getting the trophy. I know that's a little bit difficult because there's no shelf here, but that's right. But maybe try to find a better way to get the trophy from wherever you're going to hide it up to the lectern. But overall, very good job, and I was very surprised and a very, very good presentation, so thank you. All right, next I'd like to move to the next evaluation for this morning. And evaluating Gary Reece and his award acceptance will be Rick Davis.
Thank you, Darren. Mr. General Evaluator, my fellow Toastmasters, this is speech number 5 out of the Advanced Manual Special Occasion Speeches. The objectives for this speech, accepting an award, is to accept an award with dignity, grace, and sincerity, and acknowledge the presenting organization. I think Gary did a great job. The narcissistic opera singer, me. I think he showed appreciation to the organization really well. He singled out each member, said something specific to that member. It wasn't sort of a general blanket statement. He appeared very sincere in his comments. And he also appeared very comfortable up here. I thought it felt like this was a good opportunity to thank people, and you weren't nervous about it. The only suggestion I had is that there appeared to be sort of a a focus problem. It wasn't your problem necessarily, but there was a sort of a trade-off between you and Carol. It wasn't clear to me exactly what the award was for. She started talking about winning the Toastmasters International speech contest, okay. She talked about the club, all that sort of thing. I think it would have been nice if you guys could have focused down onto one or two things that you're receiving this award for, whether you be a great guy for saving this club from oblivion and doing great things, or for winning the international speech contest. I think it would have been better if it sort of been about one thing rather than 4 or 5 things that we were talking about up here. So I thought you did a great job. I really appreciated what you had to say, and I felt like you did a really great job at accepting your speech. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Rick. At this point, I'd like to welcome our counter and grammarian, Carol Kormelink.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. The grammarian report, Rita Reece, we had 4 people use the triumphant. I even forgot to use it in my table topics. Rita used it, Gordon used it, Darren used it. Darren, I did have, you said Gary were instead of Gary was. That was my only error in grammar that I heard today. In the table topics, Rita, I did not hear one, or ah. In Rick's speech, you did a lot of double clutching today. The, and he, somebody, overhaul, you said, and then you changed it to overall. Major. You use so as a connector about 6 times, and in your evaluation, you also used a double clutch, his. And I'm thinking, gosh, Rick is so good. I have not heard him say one, and towards the end of your speech, you put in a couple uhs, one the and in the evaluation you had an So I thought that was great. It was only towards the end where you brought the uhs in. In Gary's speech, Gary does a lot of lip smacking. He has greatly improved. I heard only 1 lip smack today. Didn't hear any ums and ahs. Gordon, you have greatly improved in your use of uhs. I counted only 6 today, so that's a great improvement for you. Counted 2 for Darren uhs, and that was my report for today. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Carol. Next, I'd like to welcome our timer to give our timers report.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you.
Well, for timing today, we started out with the table topics, and on Carol's which topic, she used 50 seconds. Steve, on his ghost topic, used 58 seconds. And Gary, as a fairy princess, used 1 minute and 19 seconds. Everybody qualified. Our speakers today, Rick Davis with his job interview, 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Carol presenting an award, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And Gary accepting the award, 6 minutes and 25 seconds. Darren, our general evaluator, was up here about 1 minute and 30 seconds total. Gordon, evaluating for Rick, was 1 minute and 20 seconds. Darren, evaluating for Carol, was 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And Rick, evaluating for Gary, was 1 minute and 53 seconds. Carol, as our word power today, was 2 minutes, approximately. As our grammarian, she was 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I think we've had a pretty triumphant meeting. I will turn it back over to our general evaluator, Darren.
Thank you, Rita. I'd like to give a couple overall impressions of the meeting today. First of all, I think that we started at 9:35, which is about 5 minutes late, but one thing we do have in this club are a lot of challenges due to setup, because this room looks completely different when we walk in here at 9 o'clock every Saturday. Also, we had 7 members present today, but I will say that I've been in meetings where we have 7 members present, and it seems like no one's there. Today, we have 7 members present, and it seems like there are 20 people here. That's because everyone pitches in, does a lot of different jobs, and it just feels like a very full meeting today. So I think that's to the credit of everyone here. Steve, as far as Toastmaster, one thing I've always admired about you is that you have a very, very smooth delivery, which I will try to learn from. But I think you do a very good job of being Toastmaster and other various roles around the club. The word triumph, I think, was, sometimes we come up with very exotic words for the word of the day, and sometimes it's better just to come up with an easier word that everyone can incorporate, and I think that's what happened today. And Carol, one thing I will just say is that whenever you do a role, you do a very good job of coming to the lectern and explaining what that role is, which I think is one thing is good for all of us, but it's also good for any new members or visitors who may come to the club, as well as the people in the audience, which is great. As far as the evaluation portion, Gordon, I think you gave a very informed evaluation to Rick. Of course I just said it, but the only one piece of advice I would give to you is that to make certain that whenever you give evaluation, always try to come up with something that the person can take away and say, I think you could have done this a little bit better, or just some little nugget of information that they can improve upon. And Rick, every time you give a speech, I know I'm going to learn something. And once again today, I really love hearing about your different opinions on things, and every time you give a speech, I know either we're going to learn something good or we're going to hear some very informed opinions, and I think we did today, so that was very much enjoyed. Carol and Gary, I think once again, as I said earlier, that was a very unique group of speeches, which I've never seen before, so I think it was very enjoyable for all of us, and I think all of us, I speak for all of us to say that I hope 2 years from now you can give that speech and that acceptance in reality. As far as the evaluation of Gary, I really didn't have much more to say. I think it was a very, very good acceptance speech, and once again, a very sincere, which I think it's I think you guys are very well on, or will be ready to, like I say, give that acceptance and that award when the time comes. Overall, I thought it was a very good meeting. One thing I will say on my part is, since I had many different roles, I had many different papers, and one thing this is one improvement for my part, I had 3 or 4 different papers, and I found myself juggling papers up here and not really finding what I needed. So I guess I need to find a better way to do that when you have multiple roles and are doing multiple things. But overall, I thought it was a very good meeting. Like I said, we had 7 people here, but it felt like 20. So at this point, I'd like to return control of the program to our Toastmaster, Steve Ahrenholz. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for a very nice overview of our total meeting. I'd also like to recognize Michael Schaefer, who is our director for today's meeting. Some of you watching in may have wondered why in the world we time everything. Well, part of a Toastmasters meeting is also learning to speak within the time constraints that we're given, and to get your message across, and then to sit down and be quiet. How many times have you been to a meeting that goes on and on and on? Usually it impresses when people can get up, get their message across, and then they're finished. And that's one of the things we try to do in a Toastmasters meeting. Conduct them in a timely manner. We learn to speak within the time constraints and yet get the full message across that we want to convey to our listeners. I hope that you found our meeting interesting. If you would like to come and visit us, we will be having our next studio meeting on November 18th. And feel free to come down and sit in our studio, watch our meeting, learn more about Toastmasters. At this point, I would like to turn the meeting back over to our club president, Gary Reece. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Is there anybody out there that's interested in a challenge? According to polls, the #1 fear in the United States is not dying. That's #2. #1 is fear of public speaking. So I guess the ultimate nightmare would be to die and then have to give one's own eulogy in front of a crowd. This is your opportunity. There are clubs like this one all over the city. More than 50 clubs all total in this greater Cincinnati area. You have an opportunity to get involved in these clubs. Learn public speaking. Learn how to effectively communicate. As Darren was saying about verbal economy, learn how to speak less and say more. I encourage each and every one of you to get a hold of us. Find us. What would our website be, Carol?
TV Toastmasters,
.com.
It's actually free, tv.freetoasthost.
TV. Dot. Free. Toast. Free Toast Host. I apologize for those goofs. Not everyone's perfect, and I'm certainly the least of those. With that, I adjourn today's meeting of TV Toastmasters. Have a great month.